Welcome back to the deep dive. We've got some really focused source material today. It takes centuries of spiritual thought and kind of distills it right down. We're looking at an excerpt from Rhapsody of Realities by Pastor Chris, and it zeroes in on Luke 1.16. Now, this verse, it talks about John the Baptist Commission, but the source material pulls out a mandate. It says it's for believers right now. It's all about what the righteous are meant to carry specifically, this thing called the wisdom of the just.
That's absolutely right. And our mission today really is to get past just reading the words on the page. We need to analyze how the source defines this divine wisdom. Importantly, we need to see what it is, and maybe even more importantly, what it isn't. Because the source is pretty insistent that carrying this specific wisdom, that's the core job, the assignment for, well, making ready a people prepared for the Lord.
Okay, right. So let's unpack that mandate because, to get the assignment, you have to start with the original text, don't you? Luke 1.16, it says, John the Baptist comes in the spirit and power of Elijah. So what was his actual, job description according to the verse?
Well, the source material really anchors itself in two main parts of that verse. John's mission, it was multifaceted, definitely. First, you've got the part about turning the hearts of the fathers to the children. People often see that as fixing broken family lines, generational healing, foundational stuff. And that was critical prep work, no doubt. But then there's the second part, and this is what the source really highlights for believers today. The goal was to turn the disobedient, specifically to the wisdom of the just, all so that he could, quote, make ready a people prepared for the Lord.
Okay, I appreciate you mentioning the generational bit first. It shows the mission wasn't just one thing, it was relationships and this spiritual alignment. But let's hone in on that second piece, turning the disobedient towards a very specific type of knowledge, the wisdom of the just. Why just them? Why that specific group? What's the source implying with that kind of exclusivity?
Yeah, that's key. It implies that the wisdom needed to prepare people for the Lord. Well, you can't just find it through normal human ways like studying or debating. It's distinct. It belongs uniquely to those called the just. And the source hammers this home, this task, aligning people with this special wisdom. It's not just some historical detail about John. It's presented as the unique, ongoing spiritual calling for righteous people today. This wisdom is the key ingredient, the catalyst for getting people ready.
Right. So if we, the just today, are tasked with turning people towards it, then we absolutely have to define it. What is this wisdom of the just? If I tried to understand it using, say, my everyday logic or academic knowledge or philosophy, what does the source say I'd be missing?
Oh, the source is very, very clear on this, and it's a critical distinction for anyone listening.
Yeah.
This wisdom of the just is defined, first off, by what it's not. It's not academic achievement. Doesn't matter how many degrees you have.
Okay.
It's not about being mentally sharp, quick-witted or having a high IQ. And it's definitely not just philosophical depth, but the ability to think really deeply about life's big questions. Let's make it practical. You could have someone brilliant, right? Multiple PhDs, sharpest person in any debate, argues philosophy like a master. But according to this source, if their actions are totally out of sync with God's will and purpose, they fundamentally lack this specific wisdom. Even with all that brain power, the source draws a hard line between spiritual function and mental ability. They're separate categories.
That really clarifies it. So if it's not intellectual, how does the source define it positively? What is it? What's the mechanism? How does it work?
It's described primarily as a spiritual virtue. Now, that word virtue is important. It signals something imparted, not just learned. It has to be given, essentially. It flows directly from God's Spirit.
Okay, imparted.
And its purpose isn't abstract. It's intensely practical. The goal is to equip people, men and women, to actually walk successfully with the Lord, to please Him. Think of it like the spiritual operating system needed to stay aligned with God's plan.
An operating system. I like that analogy. And what about the results, the observable effects? What does this wisdom actually do according to the source? What stands out?
It does two really crucial things. First, it discerns purpose. It helps you understand the why behind things, your existence, circumstances, everything.
Purpose discernment. Got it.
But the second function, this is what really lifts it beyond just, good judgment or prudence. The wisdom of the just, the source says, sees beyond natural sequences.
Whoa, hang on. Let's drill into that phrase. Sees beyond natural sequences.
Wow.
It sounds like it bypasses normal logic, right? Like if I have a problem, logic says you A, then B, then C to get solution D. Are you saying this divine wisdom lets someone maybe skip B and C? Or even redefine what D is supposed to be?
That's exactly it. Human wisdom, Our standard logic, it's built on deduction, past results, predictable cause and effect. It sees the physical steps needed from A to B.
Right, the logical path.
But the wisdom of the just operates differently. It aligns with divine destiny, which often seems to ignore that step-by-step, measurable causality we rely on. Think of it like this. Say you're facing a huge financial problem. Natural sequence thinking, human logic screams, cut back, save, hoard, based on what you can see right now.
Makes sense.
Divine wisdom, though, seeing beyond that immediate reality, might prompt a totally different action. Maybe giving something away or starting some venture that looks completely illogical on paper. Why? Because it's based on a divine instruction tied to a future promise, regardless of the current, maybe depressing facts. This wisdom tells you to act based on the destination God has shown you, not the roadmap reality seems to offer.
Wow. Okay, that makes the distinction incredibly sharp. And it explains why the disobedient need to be turned towards it. Because their disobedience is likely rooted in sticking to those natural, visible sequences that seem logical but actually clash with God's bigger plan, their destiny.
Precisely. And that leads us right into the impact, the transformation. What happens? They receive knowledge, guidance that basically cuts right through their old ways of thinking, their established priorities. It becomes the catalyst for immediate, genuine alignment.
So not just agreeing with an idea?
No, not at all. It draws people into actual repentance, and not just feeling sorry, but a true, deep resyncing of their whole internal programming, their motivations.
A resyncing. So it's an active spiritual reorientation. How does the source talk about this change in priorities? What does that look like?
It says the result is bringing them into sync with the agenda of heaven. That's the phrase used. What does that mean practically? It means their life choices, how they spend money, their time, their relationships. Everything starts reflecting God's purpose over personal comfort. Or, spiritual priorities over what seems like the logical, safe, or profitable thing to do. This wisdom acts like an internal compass, making sure their actions line up with God's ultimate will, not just reacting to fear or greed or what the world expects.
Okay, and this is where John's mission way back then connects directly to today. The source is saying, we, the righteous now, carry this wisdom, and our job, when we share the gospel, when we lead people to Christ, is actually to turn them to this wisdom.
That's the core application for today, yes.
Yeah.
The source identifies the current work of God's Spirit, operating through these carriers of wisdom by pointing to specific shifts. These shifts are like proof that the wisdom is active. It turns people from darkness to light. That's a classic one.
Right.
From confusion, maybe confusion about their life, their purpose, to clarity. And maybe most profoundly, it turns them from rebellion against God, against his ways, to reverence and obedience. Those shifts are the markers. The very fact that someone who is rebellious suddenly embraces reverence, embraces obedience, in the framework of this source material, that's presented as direct evidence that a purely spiritual event has happened. The wisdom of the just has been imparted. It's an outcome that kind of defies simple persuasion or willpower. It's beyond just convincing someone.
That really elevates the idea of sharing faith, doesn't it? From just convincing someone with arguments to being part of a spiritual transmission. Okay, let's circle back then to this idea of the righteous being carriers of divine wisdom. This is the ongoing work, making people ready for the Lord. But what about the carrier themselves? How does this wisdom impact their life personally? Is it only relevant when you're actively trying to turn someone else?
Oh, not at all. No, for the person carrying it, the impact is meant to be total, comprehensive, daily. This wisdom isn't something you just pull out for a specific ministry task or a church service. The source is quite specific about how this virtue should direct your everyday life, your choices, keeping you aligned and prepared too.
Okay, how so?
Well, it highlights 3 practical ways it works in the carrier's life. First, this wisdom comes to dominate your thoughts. It's set to the filter. It determines the priorities in your own internal world, what you dwell on.
Dominates thoughts, okay.
Second, it guides your choices. So when you face a crossroads, take this job or that one. Make this investment. Move here. The decision isn't just based on a pros and cons list or logical risk assessment. It's guided by that discernment of purpose we talked about.
Right, aligning with the bigger picture. And the third way?
It propels your actions. This is crucial. If your actions are propelled by this wisdom, they aren't just reactions to circumstances. They're purposeful, proactive. It might mean, for example, choosing to forgive when every natural instinct, every bit of human logic screams for payback.
Yeah.
Or choosing patience and trust when the situation seems to demand an immediate, forceful, controlling response. This wisdom ensures that the steps you take, even the small ones, are aligned with divine destiny, even if maybe especially if, they look completely counterintuitive to everyone else watching.
That's a really powerful framework. It takes something that sounds a bit abstract, divine wisdom, and makes it
Yeah.
very practical for, well, for leadership in everyday life.
Absolutely. And if we tie this all back together, back to the source material's main thrust, the key insight, the big takeaway, is that this wisdom is radically different from any earthly concept of being smart or strategic or prudent. Its defining feature isn't intellectual horsepower, it's spiritual alignment. It's the ability to discern God's purpose and, crucially, to act outside of normal human causality. That's the power, the source suggests, inherent in this commission to be carriers of the wisdom of the just.
Okay. So, as we wrap up this deep dive, let's leave you, our listener, with something to think about, drawing directly from that function of the wisdom. If this wisdom of the just truly allows someone to see beyond natural sequences, I think about a problem you're facing right now. Maybe it's a financial bind, a stuck relationship, a career plateau, something you've been tackling with standard, step by step, logical thinking. What might it look like just this week to consciously try and abandon that natural sequence thinking for that specific problem? What would it require of you to even consider pursuing a divinely aligned solution that might seem, frankly, illogical on the surface? Just something to mull over as you reflect on maybe your own commission, your own walk. And if you do want to explore the source material we discussed today more deeply, you can find information about the devotional at the website mentioned in the original excerpt. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.
For more information on how you can grow spiritually using Rhapsody of Realities, please visit our website, www.rhapsodyofrealities.org, or you can also visit rin.rhapsodyofrealities.org/salvation. Thank you.